From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal Week in Review. And what a week it was in Alabama government and politics. The legislature met for the 4th, 5th, and 6th days of the 30-day session. Technically, that makes us 20% finished. But don't let that fool you. There's a long way to go. We've reported for weeks on how addressing crime is the top priority of this session for Governor Kay Ivey and legislative leaders. This week, many of those leaders gathered in the Capitol to roll out the Safe Alabama package that aims to crack down on violent crime, support police officers, and take deadly weapons off the streets. Among the bills in the Safe Alabama package are the Back the Blue Legal Protection Act that would offer greater liability protections to police who discharge their weapons in the course of duty, offering scholarships to children of law enforcement officers to enhance recruitment, tightening laws on gun possession in inner cities, particularly when it comes to felons, expanding the metro area crime suppression units to crack down on violence, more monitoring of juvenile offenders, and banning Glock switches. Ivey called on lawmakers to pass those bills and send them to her desk.
Y'all, this package is responsible and it's important. As I've said, bolstering public safety is my #1 priority for this session. And I look forward to getting these bills to my desk so I can officially make it law and create a safer Alabama.
While much of the package has bipartisan support, Democrats this week pushed back on parts of it, namely the Back the Blue Police Officer Liability Shield proposal. They say that bill goes too far, and they want to work with Republicans to scale it back. One of the crime bills saw movement in committee this week. The Senate Judiciary Committee advanced Senate Bill 116, a measure to ban so-called Glock switches. It's sponsored by State Senator Will Barfoot. It would make it illegal at the state level to own or possess devices that convert regular handguns into fully automatic machine guns, drastically increasing their rate of fire. These devices are already banned under federal law, but Barfoot and others say adding a state prohibition will help law enforcement crack down on their use. The bill received bipartisan support in committee, and senators also heard emotional testimony from Birmingham Mayor Randall Woodfin, whose city was rocked by a deadly mass shooting last fall, an attack that left 4 dead and 17 others injured. Investigators say the shooter used a Glock switch.
This bill gives our local law enforcement the ability, when they pull somebody over who has a Glock switch, again, commonly called a Glock switch, a conversion kit in their possession, to arrest them on a state statute.
These guns are not built for the thrust and the force that comes when they modify these guns, so they don't have any control. And citizens should not be afraid to go places because of being injured, killed, or shot.
I believe what you all are doing here today related to machine gun conversion devices will literally save Alabamian lives. In Birmingham and in other cities across the state, there are too many grieving mothers who've lost their child because of the use of these machine gun devices. Too many children have lost parents because of these machine gun conversion devices. In 2024, we had 2 mass shootings, and machine gun conversion devices were used in both. Innocent lives were stolen from families. Birmingham would not have had the deadliest year of record if these conversion devices had not been used.
Immigration was a big topic this week in the Senate. Republicans say they want to align Alabama law to complement federal immigration enforcement efforts under the Trump administration. Here's what they brought to the floor. Senate Bill 63 from State Senator Lance Bell would require law enforcement agencies to fingerprint and get DNA samples from any illegal aliens in their custody. Senate Bill 53 from State Senator Wes Kitchens would create the crime of human smuggling if someone transports into Alabama someone they know or reasonably should have known is an illegal alien. And Senate Bill 55 from State Senator Chris Elliott would change current law to say Alabama will not recognize out-of-state driver's licenses that are issued to people who did not prove their legal status at the time of issuance. All those bills passed along party lines, with Republicans saying their efforts are aimed at protecting Alabama and combating crime.
So the question is it going to be a problem for other people that are driving from other states? And the answer is, if they're illegal, yes. and it's designed to make it a problem if they're illegal. I mean, look, there are 19 other states that say, hey, we're going to give you a driver's license even if you have no proof that you're here legally, and it's valid for being able to drive in that state only. Alabama doesn't issue licenses like that, and so to answer your question just as directly as possible, if they're here illegally, they don't have any proof that they're here legally, didn't prove that when they got a driver's license in another state, then we're not going to honor their license here in Alabama.
A lot of them are here doing great work, being good citizens. We're just trying to capture the ones that are committing the criminal acts, doing things of that nature. My bill, actually, we passed it through the Senate in May of '23, so it had nothing to do with what's going on right now with that. But I think the Senate Republicans are working hard in trying to assist President Trump in his goal of securing the border and getting us back to a safe state that we used to be.
It's addressing the issues that we face right now. Coming from Marshall County, we have a lot of issues that we're trying to correct, and I think a lot of the bills that we have seen on the floor today and other bills that we've discussed, the House has a package that they're going to be working on, and I think all of that goes back to the issues that we're facing today in Alabama.
Senate Democrats were opposed to the immigration bills, but they chose not to engage in filibusters that would have dragged out debate potentially into the night. Minority Leader Bobby Singleton said Democrats worked with Republicans in an effort to, in his words, catch some of the unintended consequences in the legislation. Singleton also criticized the bills as being more political theater than meaningful policy and appealing to national politics rather than addressing Alabama issues.
It's all about a lot of pomp and circumstances. Even if you look at the driver's license bill, the only penalty in it is a ticket. I mean, why are we pushing bills like this? And just to be able to say that we did something for immigration, to be able to please the President of the United States. I think that we'll see a lot of that going on at the federal level. If we just settle down and take our time, they're probably going to push down law that's going to make us have to do something totally different anyway, just to become in line with what they're doing. You know, as an African American who understand the history of my people that were bought here on slave ships, it's still kind of sketchy as to whether or not the way I get treated on a day-to-day basis, being targeted, in terms of profile and crimes and being blamed for different stuff. So it's hard to sit back and see other races of people go through the same thing.
Each of those bills now go to the House. Reforming the Department of Veterans Affairs and its board was a major topic this week. Legislation to bring the department closer in line with state government and make the commissioner a cabinet official was debated on the Senate floor. The bill comes after a messy interagency dust-up last year that eventually led to the dismissal of the commissioner over the board's objections. Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders has more from the Senate.
Debate over Senate Bill 67 took center stage at the Alabama State House this week. The proposed legislation would give the governor the power to appoint the commissioner of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Some lawmakers argued that the department has operated without enough oversight for too long. Senator Greg Albritton said it was time for a change.
This entity has remained in obscurity, and this is an effort to bring it out of obscurity and into the operations of state government.
Several senators took to the floor to push amendments aimed at ensuring veterans organizations still have a voice in making appointments to the Veterans Board.
But I'm hopeful that given the overwhelming response, the feedback, the stakeholder input that we had today, I'm hopeful that everybody will be excited about moving forward in a unified front.
It gives them notice. It also says that we will accept 3 recommendations to fill that position, and that we will give them primary consideration in appointing that new board member.
Democratic Senator Marika Coleman acknowledged her reservations about making such a huge change to the department, but expressed optimism about the progress being made.
Challenges with this bill that's concerning to me, but on the positive, because I'm trying to be that person now, on the positive, some of them came down today. They did inform me that they got some great reception, that people were willing to have conversations, and I think that's the place that we need to be.
The bill's co-sponsor, Senator Andrew Jones, said the back and forth of amendments on the Senate floor showed how the legislative process is supposed to work.
And although there was a little sausage making and things might not have fit and things had to be reworked, and we finally got there. So given the fact that it's all in there and together, we've taken some feedback, we've had some discussions, we've heard a lot from our veterans communities about what's important to them.
No vote was taken on the legislation as Senator Jones says he wanted to give lawmakers and stakeholders more time to discuss any more possible changes. But he hopes to bring it up for a final vote sometime next week. Reporting from the State House in Montgomery, I'm Jeff Sanders for Capitol Journal.
The House of Representatives picked up its pace this week, working through legislation on the floor. Much of their work was bipartisan and non-controversial, but there was plenty of contentious debate over gender issues as legislation moved through committee and onto the floor. Capitol Journal's Randy Scott reports from the House.
House lawmakers spent the first day of week 2 in a committee meeting. Senate Bill 79, which deals with the subject of what is a woman, appears in the Health Committee.
I wish I didn't have to be here today. I wish we didn't need to define what a man is or a woman is, but you know we do. When you have a Supreme Court justice who could not define what a woman is, despite being one herself, looks like we're going to have to codify this into Alabama law.
This bill defines female as an individual who has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental anomaly, genetic anomaly, or accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces ova. And that includes me. Do you want to walk into the women's bathroom and see me? Do you want your daughters to do that? If this is how you want to define things, if this is how you want society to look like, I look forward to using the women's restroom in the State House going forward.
Senate Bill 79 passes the committee and is on the floor of the House the next day. Concerns are raised about the speed and lack of time for debate.
I think you will find that the individuals that have spoken this morning are not necessarily in opposition to what a male and a female is. That is not the opposition. It is a process by which we've used to get to this point.
Oh, I understand. Yes, ma'am.
And in doing so, that we have not had the opportunity. I don't think that it would have taken any more time than it's been taken, that we've taken at this particular point.
I understand.
It's just the fact that that was the need, or it was felt that that was a need. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to limit the conversations on it.
Senate Bill 79 passes and is later signed into law by the governor. Both sides of the House are talking about Governor Kay Ivey's Save Alabama package of bills designed to fight crime and protect those keeping people safe.
We've already seen some problems with them, but we have an opportunity now to address them and try to come up with some consensus in terms of how they should be written so that it is best for the whole population and not just a few.
I certainly think we can, and that's the goal. I mean, I didn't know they'd put out a statement. You told me something I didn't know, but we're going to pass some bills on that, regardless of what they think. You know, and it's a sad day when we don't protect our police officers and defend them for serving us every day.
At the State House, Randy Scott, Capitol Journal.
Turning now to Washington, where Alabama's congressional delegation is reacting to the potential funding cuts coming from Elon Musk and his presidentially created Department of Government Efficiency. Some of the cuts are hitting close to home, including those planned for the National Institutes of Health, which spends hundreds of millions at research institutions in Alabama. Capitol Journal's Alex Engel reports from Washington.
Alabama's Republicans are mostly embracing Elon Musk and Doge, while Democrats are working to find their best message to fight against his efforts to slash the federal government.
If the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
Doge has become a popular talking point in the halls of Congress, which is seen as a good or bad thing depending on who you ask.
Conversations about a co-president referencing Elon Musk, referencing the work that Doge is doing. I think it's important to remember that President Trump ran on this. I mean, he said we're going to look for wasteful spending across our government.
Senator Katie Britt's endorsement of Doge during a hearing with the Fed chair struck a different tone than her more cautious comments earlier in the week on the now paused NIH funding cuts. She also spoke with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now confirmed to be the health secretary, about those cuts. UAB says they could slow research.
He understands the lives that it saves, and he's committed to making sure that we're judicious about how we do this.
Fellow Alabama Republicans told me they understand there are concerns about research in the state, but say the money needs to be spent wisely. Senator Tommy Tuberville says if the federal government ends up being half as successful as one of Musk's companies, it will be a win for Alabama.
I'm all in for funding research to help Americans live longer, and healthier lives, but we have to get rid of the liberal pet projects that have been bankrolled by the taxpayers. You, the taxpayers, have been paying for this nonsense.
But Democrats like Congresswoman Terry Sewell aren't feeling as optimistic about the operation aimed at making the federal government more efficient.
Our phones have been ringing off the hook with constituents who are horrified and frightened that their personal information has been handed over to an unelected billionaire with no accountability to the American people.
Sewell honed in on Musk getting access to the Treasury payment system that contains personal sensitive data. A federal judge has paused that access for now. Sewell led a letter with other Ways and Means Democrats asking for more info on that access. She also convened an emergency town hall Tuesday to tell her constituents about how she was fighting back.
Americans' privacy is being invaded. Federal workers are being attacked and Black history is being erased. That is why I want to take this moment to speak directly with you.
The DOJ subcommittee also met for the first time this week to start the war on waste. Next on the to-do list for Congress is getting both chambers to agree on a budget blueprint to implement Trump's agenda. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Alex Engel, Capitol Journal.
A big week for State Representative Randall Shedd. The Coleman lawmaker announced he will step down from his House seat and take a position in Senate President Pro Tem Garland Gudger's office, managing constituent affairs. In his last day in the House, Shedd was able to pass one last bill. That legislation was ensuring that prospective home buyers aren't required to enter into contracts with real estate agents in order to see homes. Shedd's House colleagues honored him for his service and wished him well in his new role.
But one of the best I've ever served with is Randall Shedd. And when I ran for Speaker, I called Randall and asked him if he would do my nomination because I respected him that much. And we're going to miss you, but we're proud of you. And we know whatever you do, God's led you in that direction. You're going to do an amazing job.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Leader, members of this, both sides of the aisle, I love everybody. So I'll just keep it brief and say thank you for, y'all shocked me this morning, and staff and security and everybody that works and makes the train run in this place, and on time, by the way, Mr. Speaker. It's been a wonderful ride, and I look forward to the next chapter.
We reported last year that Alabama's longest-serving lawmaker is the subject of a new book chronicling his more than 5 decades in public service. Senator Jabbo Waggoner, an Alabama political legend, is written by political columnist Steve Flowers. The two men took part in a special book signing this week, where even Governor Kay Ivey stopped by to get her copy. Waggoner's career spans back to 1967, when he first took office under Governor Lurleen Wallace. Over the years, he has played a key role in shaping Alabama politics, particularly in the Birmingham area.
His 52-year career in the state Senate is almost a direct correlation to the change in Birmingham being a blue-collar steel city to the biggest medical research institute in America. He's done so much civically in Jefferson County. But when this book is set over at the archives 50 years from now, and all of us are gone, he has the history for the longest-serving state senator in Alabama history.
You know, I started in this process in 1967 with Lurleen Wallace. She was my first governor, and I've served with a total of 11 governors, Lurleen being the first one. I guess you can say I got hooked on this process. I don't know if that's proper, but I did. I've been serving for 52 years now, and to look back on my career, I said, I think Steve did a really good job.
This week, faithful citizens from throughout Alabama gathered in Montgomery to pray for the state's leaders as the legislative session begins. the Alabama Citizens Action Program, better known as ALCAP, put on the prayer rally. And although the rain kept them off the State House steps, it did not dampen their spirits or deter their mission.
We were glad to gather in this room just to pray for all three branches of our government, to call the names of those that are elected to such high offices, and just bring together believers, Christians from all across the state who believe in the power of prayer and who pay attention to what goes on in our government. And we know that prayer is powerful, and we need more of an emphasis on prayer. So it's our honor to sort of coordinate this and to welcome in many of the folks who are elected to office to come in and allow us to pray with them and for them. And it's a good day, and it's been a great event.
When we come back, I'll sit down with State Senator Greg Albritton to talk about the general fund budget, prison construction progress, and the prospect of gambling legislation. After that, State Representative Barbara Drummond joins me to offer the Democrats' perspective on the session so far and her continued efforts to curb teen vaping. And later in the show, State Representative Joe Lovvorn is in studio to talk about his legislation aiming to give Alabama colleges a leg up in the name, image, and likeness game. Stay with us.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Greg Albritton, Chairman of the Senate General Fund Budget Committee. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Well, all right, y'all had some action in the General Fund Budget Committee this week. Give us an overview. Everybody talks about the revenues kind of getting back to normal after the quote-unquote sugar high of recent years.
Yes.
How's that going? Because I know that y'all have some pretty significant increases asking of the general fund. I'm thinking about Medicaid and all kids. I'm thinking about Department of Corrections. Some of these are pretty significant.
I would say more than significant. You're right. Medicaid's $228 million more. $228 million more. That's more than double, almost 3 times what the asks have been in the past few years. Then all kids, another $28 million, and then DOC, Department of Corrections, another close to $100 million.
Yeah, 90 something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So those are pretty significant asks. And you're right, we are coming off the sugar highs, if you want to term it that way. But we're getting back down to normal. I think you mentioned that. Normal is different from where it was about 5 years ago. Revenues are up, and so are demands. We'll be okay, we believe, this year, but we're not putting a supplemental in the general fund, at least, not to my knowledge at this point. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to be careful and cautious, not spend, again, every dime, and we're trying to be very so that we don't create a problem in the future with our spending.
Right. Spend too much, get too many demands out there, and then
there you go.
And then you talk about cuts, and nobody likes that. And I know that part of the revenue growth, I talked about this with the finance director the other day, has been the state deposits and all the interest gained on that, and that's really abnormal. The interest, going into the general fund. So that might not always be around a year, 2 years into the future.
Oh, it won't be, because most of that is based on what we're holding in our deposits. Much of that is federal money that has to be spent by the end of this year. And so that money will be drained out, so we will lose that interest. Not to mention what happens with the feds and expectations is that those interest rates will decline. So both of those will cause a decrease in that revenue source.
How do you prepare for that as the general fund chairman? How do you prepare agencies for, hey, we're okay this year, but looking into the year, 2, 3 years down the line, we could be looking at a different budget situation, understanding that the need is still there, but the resources may not be.
No, that's true. And couple that with the point also that we've done extensive tax cuts and tax credits, both of which amount to the same thing. It reduces revenue. So we are looking at reduction in revenues. We're looking at a reduction in ability to hold money, like we have in some cases with savings accounts. And so we've got, the only answer there is to spend less, contract or restrict the spending levels and the growth of that spending. That's hard to do too.
Well, no kidding, given all the commitments and everything. And I want to talk about one of those, and that's prison construction. Y'all are following this law that you passed back in 2021, I guess.
21 it was, yep.
Which is, I mean, it didn't seem like that long ago, but here we are with the Elmore County project really going along. How do you feel about that? Are you pleased? Is the legislature pleased about how the construction has gone? Are they following the law?
I'd like to speak about that. That is an interesting development. You know, we hadn't built prisons in more than 50 years, and this was a huge endeavor. 200 acres, about 50 different buildings. It's a large project, and we started out very, very slow with this. Had difficulties at the beginning, but we seem to be on top of this. We've learned a lot in this past year or so. We've got people on the ground representing and state people that are watching this, that are trained, that know how to build and know the legal ramifications. That group has been doing very well. Anybody, well, I'm speaking too bluntly, but I'd welcome folks, you guys, to go out and take a look and see the progress that's made.
We've talked about that with the commissioner. We had some print photos and everything about a year ago, but I bet it's way different now.
It is very different. And you know, they build the cells on site and then move them to where the site is for placement. It's a great operation. It's working very well. We've had a few glitches, but we've overcome them all, and I think it's progressing very well.
What about Escambia? The second project is supposed to be in Escambia. That's down in your neck of the woods. I know there's a site and everything, but has that construction started, or is it
No,
still?
it has not.
Okay.
It has not. Now, and if I might, let me talk about the finances that's going on some of that. You know, when we first put this together, the estimate was both prisons were going to cost $785 million to construct both. Well, that didn't turn out.
Right.
The Elmore right now, the construction cost is $1.086 billion. That's more than both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, when we went to market for that 785 bond, we were only able to sell 500 million.
That was because of some of the social justice pressure on institutions.
Exactly.
And things. Yeah.
Exactly. So all of that came about. I mean, there were riots in London and New York about us selling prison bonds. Okay, that affected it. So we were only able to sell 500. And yet, right now, what we've done, because of the way we've handled our finances, is we have the money to finish Elmore completely. That 1.086, we've got the money for that. Coupled with that, we also have the money in hand and in the bank for about 60% of Escambia facility. Now, put that together. That's a lot of money.
And is that part the bond and part straight general fund allocations?
Correct. And also part ARPA. If you recall, when we first started,
$400 million or so.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So we've been able to put aside hundreds of millions of dollars, cash money, to get this project moving along.
You moved legislation this week that would allow the state to enter the bond market again.
Correct.
It doesn't force the state to, but it gives the authority for that, prison bonding authority.
That's true. We got that out of committee today.
Okay. And yet, I talked with Finance Director Bill Poole, and he didn't seem so sure that the state would pursue a bond, even if they had the authority. What's your take on that?
Well, I hope not. Okay, I hope we can find the money to be able to do this and pay. The least amount that we borrow, the better. However, the last thing we need is to start and get Elmore, Escambia up to about 60% and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be worse off then. Then there's more cost to get started back and other matters. All this bill does is it gives us a means, the excess capacity, so that if we need to borrow money to move this along, to get this thing completed, we can do it. We can do it without delay. We can do it without a problem. And we don't have to do it right now. We can do it later when the market's a little better.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take you up on that tour out at the Elmore site. I'd love to take our viewers on that to see what the future is on prisons.
Well, I hope DOC's watching and they can start scheduling us in.
Absolutely. We talked about it. Last time Commissioner Ham was on, we talked about it, and that was a while back. So I'll follow up with them.
Okay.
Switching gears, gambling. Everywhere I go, and I'm not even a lawmaker, everywhere I go, people ask me about gambling. So what can you say? The House says, hey, we're not touching it until it comes out of the Senate because of what happened last year. Understandable. I think y'all said that in the past.
Yeah. We keep tossing that football.
That's right. So what do you think? I keep hearing little whispers of conversations about, really from the industry side, maybe the industry's sort of being more on the same page than maybe they have in the past. What are the prospects of us seeing an actual comprehensive gambling bill, even introduced, much less debated?
I would have a bill today dropped if I had 21 votes in the Senate. I don't have 21 votes in the Senate. I've got to have 21 votes in the Senate to move this along. And keep in mind now, last week, before Sunday Super Bowl, bets were being made in the State House, I'll say it that way, on the Super Bowl, the upcoming Super Bowl. Bets were being made. I think Jalen Hurts made a lot of money for people in Alabama in that win.
Like online, you can get on your phone.
Because that's where most of the sports betting occurs, online, not to mention all the other stuff that's going on. So this, in my opinion, Alabama has a moral obligation to take control of this industry and to regulate it, to protect the public. We have that obligation, and yet we can't seem to get 21 votes to take this in and to control it.
Does the industry being on the same page, and what I mean by that is, when the Porch Creeks bought the Birmingham race course, there was this vibe of thinking like, okay, well now they might have the same kind of a commonality with the non-tribal lands and all that. So does that change the game at all?
It doesn't seem to. I can't seem to get my 21 votes. And that has been discussed. That has been investigated, if you will, as to how that would change. I haven't seen it change. We're about 2-3 votes shy in the Senate to get this done.
Well, I appreciate your candor on that. Everybody always asks me, and that's about as clear. It all comes down to math.
It does. Math and votes in the Senate and votes in the House. You got to have 21 in the Senate and 63 in the House, and they both got to be on the same bill.
Right. Yeah. Well, look, we're out of time. But Mr. Chairman, thanks again, and we'll be following these issues throughout the session.
Thanks for your time.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page. You're watching Alabama Public Television.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Barbara Drummond from Mobile. Representative, thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we're 2 weeks into session now. It's been a really busy 2 weeks, fast-paced, which we all knew that was going to be that way. So let me just ask you, how's session going so far from your perspective and from your caucus's perspective?
Well, let me just say, because I'm chair of our caucus, there are a number of things that are on the agenda that many of our caucus members have some problems with it, because we want to ensure that this is good policy that is going to move Alabama forward. So our caucus is being very deliberate in looking at what is being presented. We've got a 3-day week, which means it is going to be pretty a tough session. Right now, there are over 100 bills that have been pre-filed. And so we're being very deliberate, very strategic, looking at those bills, because we want bills that will move Alabama forward. If you look at last session when we had all the workforce development bills, those were pretty much nonpartisan. But some of the things that are coming on the agenda now, we don't particularly feel that they'll move Alabama forward. We actually feel like they will somewhat hurt Alabama. And we're very cognitive of those things, because when you look at, and I'll use a number of the immigration bills that are coming forward, we want to look at them because we want everybody to be in the United States legally, but that's our workforce. That's our workforce. So we want to make sure that we are very deliberate, that we do good policy that will help us to promote the workforce in Alabama, because immigrants, they offer a great deal in a state like Alabama that is rural by nature. So we're looking very closely at those things. And there are a number of other social bills that we're looking at that we don't feel will even move Alabama forward. And those are the kinds of things that we want to make sure that we look at very closely. We're not here for everybody's opinions or social. We're trying to do policies because Alabama's a great state. We want to move it forward. We want to make sure that it is the best that it can be. And one of those initiatives, if I may go and just talk about it, is this nonpartisan approach that we're taking with education now.
Okay.
With changing,
I did want to get to education.
Yeah, with changing the formula for education. That task force has been meeting for a number of months because we want to make sure we put dollars where students need them. And all of this is designed to help us move our workforce forward. Alabama has made some very good policies in education. You can tell that by the NAEP scores.
I was going to go there. You took the words out of my mouth, and so we'll just go ahead and talk about it.
Okay.
The NAEP scores were promising in a lot of ways, especially the younger years. But it's things like the Literacy Act, things like the Numeracy Act, investments made specifically in those laws and programs. And so you go to the changing the funding formula. Do you think that process becomes a little easier when you can tell your colleagues, see, these are the results when we do the right things?
I think that becomes a little bit more legitimate because Alabama has put a great deal of money, about $5 million, into early education and so forth, which says that is helping us. We now need to move up to those that are in the 4th through the 8th grade. The NAEP scores and the progress of the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act saying we're no longer throwing something up against the wall and sticking. We know that it will work. We need to continue to make more investment into those areas that we see that is working. And having that foundation, we now know that the foundation is going to be solid for those students that are in those younger years. And that's why I believe that we need to go to the 4th through the 8th grade now to get that foundation, because usually it's middle school that our kids are having problems.
Yeah, and the scores showed that. And
exactly.
Dr. Mackey kind of wanted to have more conversation going forward, like what's going on, what do we need? So I appreciate those comments. Let's switch gears to crime. Seems to be a big issue this session. The governor said it's her top priority. I know that you've got a gun-related bill, gun safety bill. Tell me about what it does and its prospects.
Well, it's House Bill 103, and it's a very simple bill. It is simply telling parents and guardians, if you have a weapon, I'm a gun owner, lock them up. That's it. It takes away nobody's Second Amendment right. It doesn't take away your gun or anything like that. It simply says that because of all the school shootings that we've seen across the country, and tragically we've had one in Huntsville a few days ago, and I'm thankful that nobody was injured.
The gun went off.
The gun went off. And so this bill simply says, take that weapon if you have minor children in the household and just simply lock them up. That's all we.
So that would be required under the law?
Yes, and to lock a gun up is very cheap to do so. I mean, it doesn't mandate to tell you what brand of lock, but just lock them up. I had someone just ask me, said, well, Barbara, what if I lock it up in the closet? Well, that doesn't work. Our kids are a lot more creative than that. We're talking about legitimately locking up your weapon so that that kid will not have access. I had someone else come to me and say, I use a trigger lock. What if my kid takes that gun with the trigger lock to school? Will I be held responsible? Well, they won't, because he won't be able to use the gun. It's locked up. The premise here is safety for our children and those who educate our children. There have been too many shootings where you've seen innocent people get killed as well as hurt. And I don't want that to happen. So that's the premise of this school safety bill. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a school safety bill for guns. Lock them up and store them properly. That's it.
Well, we'll be watching that move because there's a lot related to guns and crime this session, and just a big topic to pay attention to. Switching gears again, you've got your vaping bill back. We've talked about this so many times. Well, is it year 2, year 3?
It's the third year.
Okay.
And third year is going to be the charm.
I think, yeah, it's been around long enough, faced some hurdles here and there, but explain what your bill does. It's about child vaping and trying to prevent that, but start from the beginning.
Well, I'm not going to say it's going to prevent, because we already have some laws on the books.
Okay.
That right now, companies now have to get on the pre-market registry and tell us the type of vape products and what's in it. So that started federally, and we adopted that federal pre-market registry, so we know the bad stuff that's being sold. But there's a whole lot more that's coming in from China and Mexico and other places that we don't have a handle on it. I don't know if you're like me. I see those shops popping up like popcorn everywhere. Sure. And our young people are getting hold of it. This bill will simply do a couple of things. The reason I did the bill was to create funds that would give ABC and Aaliyah enough dollars to hire the personnel to go out and to go into those places and get that bad stuff that we know is out there on the streets.
The unregulated
stuff that our kids are getting a hold of. And it will also give school personnel, right now those kids who are getting caught on school campuses with these products, they don't know what to do with them. Now those kids will go through juvenile court, them and their parents, to get some sort of regulation as to what they need to do. And then they will have to go through classes to show we don't know what the long-term effect of vaping is, but it is not good. And so this will give us an opportunity to educate not only that student, but also that parent. So this vaping bill, in my heart, it is a good piece of policy that will help our kids in the long run, and also give these 2 state departments the opportunity to go out and be educated, because going into one of these establishments is not like going looking for a stamp on a cigarette, a pack of cigarettes. They've got to know what those products are. They've got to know what's on the registry and what's in the product to be able to go in and regulate it. And we're going to create about $2.5 million to do that by having this piece of legislation.
Now, I know last year Senator Gudger was involved in your bill, I guess co-sponsor.
He was the Senate sponsor.
Well, he's pro tem now, so that can't hurt your prospects in the Senate, where it really has kind of run into roadblocks.
Well, it got all the way to the Senate floor, and we got caught up in all of the gaming legislation and so forth. So I am hoping now that Senator Gudger is the boss in the Senate, that it will probably help this bill get passed. So we've worked very hard. We've reached across the aisle, and we've worked with every group that would have an interest in vaping. But our overall goal never changed. We want to make sure that our young people don't have access to this bad stuff.
We'll leave it there and follow that bill as well going forward. Representative, thanks for your time, and I guess it's about time to say Happy Mardi Gras.
Well, Happy Mardi Gras, and we hope that you will come down to Mobile, because remember, we are the birthplace of Mardi Gras.
I'll never forget that. Y'all never let us forget. Well, again, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see you the rest of the session.
Well, thank you, and I don't think I said Happy New Year to you, but Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. free professional development for educators and child care providers, access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media, and all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Joining me next is State Representative Joe Lovvorn from Auburn. Mr. Lovvorn, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Honored to be here with you again, Todd.
Well, I also should have said Rules Chairman for the House of Representatives, which is a really key position. And I wanted you to, before we get to all these issues, remind our audience about the rules process, what your job as chairman is. Because when people are watching the House floor as it gets kind of busier in the session, it's important to remember it's not all random. There's a rhyme and reason.
Sure. Well, there's certainly rules that we follow just like in any organization. For the legislative process, the House has their rules, the Senate has their rules, and my role and our committee's role is to look at those rules, see which ones we may need to adjust and which one we're following, and things that go back to the beginning of our state. When we say things are in the basket, there's literally a basket. When there's a journal that needs to travel, there's a book that's literally a journal that is traveling. And all the way back to what committee action is done, and where the Rules Committee plays the key role is bills filed, then it has to go through the committee process where it may be amended and work through that process, and then it comes to the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee meets and decides with which legislation, if it's ready, if it's the right timing, if everything has been amended that they feel needs to move forward, if it's the right policy we're wanting to move, and then a little bit of the politics is tied to it. We set the calendar to set the agenda that would go to a full body vote in the House of Representatives. Same with the Senate bill. If it passes out of the Senate, it then goes through a House committee, and then it comes back to the House Rules Committee, and we once again look at those bills to see which ones are ready to go to a calendar form for the House to vote on.
And getting which bills on the calendar, first of all, but then in a good position on the calendar, it's all a real kind of secret sauce in there, but very important to the process and very important to fairness. Y'all received some criticism. Y'all passed a new rules package this time around. Got some criticism from the Democrats saying, hey, you're limiting our time at the mic. We need time to be able to draw out debate and filibuster a little bit. Can you respond to that criticism? Why limit debate in that way?
Oh, sure. And what we did today is a very limited thing where we had limited the debate for the bill itself to 10 minutes because we were dealing with an issue we've been dealing with for a couple of years, a bill that had already passed the Senate, gone through the committee process there, vote of the Senate, committee process in the House, and is ready to move forward. And it's a issue with the What is a Woman bill. And if you did not know how you was going to vote walking in the room, then I dare to say most people knew how they were going to vote. We had a full committee day action starting at 9:30. Public hearings. We had everything leading out of today. So we had very limited time for debate on the bill. So today I limited that to 10 minutes of debate on the bill itself. Now they could debate the calendar for an hour, which they did, and they're more than welcome to do. But as far as the legislation, we were limited with time, and our colleagues had some problems with it on the minority side, and we heard their problems today. But that's going to be a very limited times that we would do that, mainly because the time constraints we're under.
I see. So it wasn't a big package. It was just for that bill. I think that was important to make clear. Switching gears, you've got a bill. It's a timely bill. NIL, name, image, and likeness. Every college sports fan knows very well what's going on in this space. Millions of dollars in some cases being paid to athletes. I guess there's kind of a spectrum there, but it's almost the Wild West in terms of what's being allowed. What does your bill do in terms of addressing NIL and giving Alabama leg up in the system?
Sure. First of all, Todd, Joe is not a fan of NIL nor a fan of the transfer portal or how they're working in unison in sports today. However, it's the rules that we have to play under. And if we're going to have to follow those rules, I want to make sure that we give Alabama sport teams to the most competitive advantage they can have. So all our universities in the state, anything we can do to give us a leg up to recruit that scholar and that student athlete to our state, I want us to have those tools available. Other states don't have an income tax, or they're looking to do away with their income tax with NIL contracts. When someone's contributing to NIL at a university that they give have a lot of heart and believe in, that money's already been through the process, already been taxed, and then it goes to that NIL collective and then paid out to these athletes, and then it's taxed again. This would remove the state income tax portion and give us a competitive advantage when we're going up against states that either have no income tax or they're looking to do away with that, or if they leave their income tax in place, the numbers will match up. So if you had $100,000 going to a NIL athlete, 5% of that would bring it down to 95, or if you're looking at these marquee players, $1 million, it would take it down to $50,000 off the top, and in today's world, that may be the deciding factor. And the huge economic driver I know in my district and a lot of districts across the state is all the travel involved with college sports. And we're so amped up right now in our state with the Auburn-Alabama game, with basketball coming up. And so it is a conversation, if we're going to play in this and we're not going to get more leads and connections from the NCAA of what rules there are, you're going to see all of us states trying to jockey to give our teams and our universities the best foot forward they can do. And we always gripe about the big contracts, but I have to remind myself that most of the NIL is very small, minimal, that helps cover maybe the tuition and some of the living expenses of these student athletes. And that's money that's going to churn right back into our state and hopefully keep some of these student athletes living here after they've finished their education.
Well, I was going to say, because when you're talking about no income tax on these NIL monies, but what would you say to criticism from folks who say, well, look, in some cases, these are kids turning into millionaires. Why should I pay income tax when they're not having to pay income tax? Can you see some of that criticism?
I could certainly see that, understand it. I'm not a fan of income tax, period, myself, so I understand it. But if this is the rules, we're going to have to compete against, say, Georgia, which is looking to do away with their state income tax. If we can make sure that we are giving the competitive advantage to our state, this is one way to do it. And we have to look at that. Like I said at the beginning, I don't like these rules, but it's the rules that we're given and what we're having to play under, and I can understand it. I have some of that same criticism myself, and I understand it, but we all benefit when our teams are performing at the top level in our state, and we're seeing that now in basketball, and I'm very excited about all the teams rolling into football season this fall as well.
You're right. It's a really exciting time for our state in terms of basketball. Auburn and Alabama 1 and 2 in the polls. It's never happened, not just in our state, but in the SEC. And with the Iron Bowl of basketball upon us, it's just really exciting. And you're right. I think most folks weren't upset that there was some kind of mechanism that college players started getting some kind of income. But man, it seems like it's gotten out of control. So hopefully the NCAA will step in and do something. But I'm not going to hold my breath.
Well, I put a 3-year sunset on this bill as well. So if this moves forward and we pass it, we're just going to be looking at it, and then we'll be able to evaluate it year after year going after that. So
I wanted to ask you quickly about y'all's top priority this year. It really seems like everybody's top priority, addressing violent crime. You had some movement this week on the crime package. Are you optimistic that you're going to see all this, pretty ambitious package of bills get to the finish line and become law?
Well, the basics of law and order in our country shouldn't be political, but unfortunately they've become that way. And we're trying to move forward common sense package of bills with the leadership of the governor, leadership of the speaker and the pro tem to back the blue, because we have a shortage of police officers in our state just like they do across the country. Anything we can do to help recruit officers, keep them in their career if they're there, help them with tuition reimbursement for any of themselves, their own growth or their children, because their decision-making part, this is a dangerous job. They're out there fighting and standing up for you and I, And we've got to take care of them. They take care of us, and we've got to back them. And so the Back the Blue package, you'll see several bills roll out. The entire force is trying to make sure we are recruiting the top guys and gals for that job and making sure we're keeping them in that career and give them the tools they need to keep our streets safe.
Yeah. Everybody's top priority this session, which is interesting for a lot of different reasons. Well, Mr. Chairman, we're out of time. Thanks very much for coming on the show. Are you going to the Iron Bowl of basketball this weekend?
Oh,
it's not in Auburn, so
that's a big ticket to score, and I haven't scored one. So,
well, when they come to Auburn, something tells me you'll be there. Mr. Chairman, again, thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app.
Birmingham native Erskine Hawkins was a prominent African-American trumpeter, bandleader, and composer during the big band era of the 1930s and 40s. His Erskine Hawkins Orchestra was a popular dance band in New York City, and with it he recorded the hit Tuxedo Junction, about a streetcar intersection on the Ensley-Fairfield line that was a center of nightlife for African Americans. Hawkins is a member of the Alabama Music and the Alabama Jazz Halls of Fame.
That's our show for this week. Thanks for watching. Monday is a holiday, so we'll resume our nightly coverage of the Alabama legislature on Tuesday at 10:30 here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capital Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.